Equinoxe Télévision, au-delà de l'image, nous rendons compte.
p.m. in Betwa in the East region of Cameroon, same time right here in Akwa Douala. Good evening, dear viewers of Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast. First, our major stories. The editor-in-chief of Equinoxe Radio and Television fumes at the National Communication Council for persistently sanctioning the media organ. Serge Alain Otto qualifies in numerous summons of journalists of the media house by the NCC as unjust. The declarations were made today in the course of a meeting between the NCC and Equinoxe personnel. However, the said meeting was ended prematurely by the president of the National Communication Council, Joseph Chibonke. And in sports, the indomitable Lions of Cameroon undermined the authority of the Cameroon Football Federation, FECAFOOT, by siding with the Ministry of Sports and Physical Education. The Lions, who are currently lodged at the Hilton Hotel, had their first training session today at the Amadou Ahidjo Stadium Annex. The choice of the stadium where the AFCON qualifiers game is expected to hold still hangs in the air. Those are major stories. Stay with us for details and more. Much for choosing Equinoxe Television. You made the right choice. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. A 10-year-old girl is accused of killing a 2-year-old child by allegedly dumping her into a pit toilet. The incident occurred in an orphanage located in Bafoussam 2 subdivision of the West region of Cameroon. Videos reviewed from a surveillance camera shows the little girl throwing the toddler into the latrine. Innocent Aze is the man on that story.
The scene was captured by a surveillance camera that fateful night at the Divine Providence Orphanage in Jeleng, Bafoussam 2 subdivision of the West region. It shows a 10-year-old girl in the orphanage carry a 2-year-old child deep asleep and dump her in a pit toilet. After noticing the disappearance of the 2-year-old baby in the orphanage, the personnel of the orphanage started looking for her. Even if the 10-year-old girl was looking for the child, we began reviewing the video footage captured by the surveillance camera. We saw her taking the baby into the room. The video permitted the staff to identify the perpetrator behind the child's disappearance. When she entered the room, before prayers, she passed the child through the window, then went out and carried her. While at the door, she peeped around, and when she noticed no one was watching, she ran towards the toilet. She spent about 3 to 5 minutes before coming out without the baby. That is when we confirmed she is the one who dumped the baby into the pit toilet. Questioned at the Gendarmerie Brigade, the 10-year-old girl refused dumping the child in the pit toilet. Rescue soldiers removed the baby, already dead. In the meantime, the corpse of the baby is in the morgue of the Bafoussam Regional Hospital, while the 10-year-old girl is in Gendarmerie custody. The little girl, according to information, was received in the orphanage about 6 months ago for a psychological follow-up after she was victim of rape in her family. She had refused to return to her family home at the end of her follow-up.
And now 3 persons have been killed in separate attacks in the Anglophone Northwest and Southwest regions as the armed conflict persists. The attacks that spans between weekend and Monday, September 2nd, were recorded in Boye and Bamenda respectively. Femi Armstrong Sanda reports.
From the Mile 16 to the Mile 14 neighborhoods of Buya in the southwest region to Mbatu in the northwest region, the weekend till Monday this week were again characterized by shootings, burnings and killings as the 7-year-long armed conflict in the Anglophone regions persists. On the night breaking Tuesday, September 2024, 2 persons got shot and killed at Mbatu in the Bamenda 2 subdivision. Local sources say that the victims were 3 in number, a bike rider and 2 other ladies who were returning from an event in Chomba at about 2 a.m. when they got shot, allegedly in a crossfire between armed separatists and the Defense and Security Forces of Cameroon. Same sources hold that a tense gun exchange had engulfed the area for several hours before the arrival of the unfortunate civilians. Two died on the spot, a widow identified as B. Vivian and a bike rider who is known in the neighborhood as a builder by profession. The third victim, a lady, is said to be battling between life and death in a hospital facility in Bamenda. It was a sad Monday still in my 14 Buya in the Fako division of the Southwest region, where a bike rider in his 30s was shot and killed by suspected armed separatist fighters. My 14 Buya inhabitants believe that he was targeted for violating the Monday traditional ghost towns imposed by separatists in the region. Not long from my 14, a township taxi was set ablaze on the same day allegedly by the same individuals at the My 16 neighborhood. In an amateur propaganda video, armed individuals identifying as separatist fighters say they burnt down the township taxi for violating their ghost town calls. Civilians, mainly women and children, continue to suffer targeted attacks as the armed conflict in the Anglophone Northwest and Southwest regions of Cameroon persists.
And still in news connected to the over 7-year-old armed conflict, the Apostolic Nuncio to Cameroon pleads with separatist fighters to let children go to school come September 9th. Monsignor Betancourt, in a message from Pope Francis, insists that education is a fundamental human right and children should not be denied that right. Annabella tells us more.
I am the Apostolic Nuncio in Cameroon, Pope Francis's representative amongst you.
Monsignor Alvino Betancourt, the Apostolic Nuncio to Cameroon, brandishes a peace plan and calls on warring factions to spare children's future and let them go to school come September 9.
Our children are our future. Children suffer the most when there is violence. According to UNESCO, over 250 million children worldwide are prevented from attending school because of conflicts and violence. According to the World Bank, over 17,500 children in Cameroon are prevented from attending school, primarily in the regions of the Northwest, Southwest, and far North.
In an address from the Holy See to Cameroonians, the Apostolic Nuncio reiterates Pope Francis' stance. Violence can never be justified.
Millions of children's futures are destroyed. Violence is never justified. I add my voice to countless Cameroonians from all walks of life, from north to south, from east to west, not least the voices of the Catholic bishops of Cameroon, who work tirelessly to build the future.
Children are the future, and their future should not be jeopardized in a conflict the kids cannot directly relate to.
Nelson Mandela once said, "Educating all of our children must be one of our most urgent priorities." We all know that educating, more than anything else, improves our chances of building better lives. Pope Francis reminds us that the mission of schools and teachers is to develop an understanding of all that is true.
Education is one of the fundamental human rights of children, and refusing them this right is destroying their lives. The call for peace by the head of the Roman Catholic Church in Cameroon comes at a time separatist fighters have allegedly declared a 2-week lockdown in the Northwest and Southwest regions aimed at stopping children from going to school this September.
Staff Lady Annabella reporting there. Still talking on insecurity, but this time around we take you to the far north region of the country, where education stakeholders say the number of students enrolling in schools this year has decreased. The decline, according to parents in the Mayo Moscota, is as a result of persistent Boko Haram attacks. It should be noted that several children have been killed and others kidnapped by the same terrorists. Ese Lucilengo has more.
Few days to the start of the 2024-2025 academic year, fear and uncertainty reigns in Mayo Moscota in the far north region.
Nous vivons avec beaucoup de peur.
We live in fear because of daily Boko Haram attacks.
Avec tout ça,
depuis que le Boko Haram, c'est des milliers de jeunes.
Since the start of the Boko Haram insurgency, several youths have lost their lives and others kidnapped. They were taken to neighboring Nigeria.
C'est un coup fatal pour les familles.
As Boko Haram attacks continue to gain grounds, parents are scared of sending their children to school. For instance, at Uzal High School, only 300 students out of 1,500 have enrolled this year.
Nous avons beaucoup de parents qui sont déjà désolés.
Parents say they cannot enroll their children in schools because of heightened insecurity. Many have migrated to Tuburu in the north region. Here, many people cannot sleep in peace in their houses. In order to encourage parents send their children to school, the government, alongside its partners via social initiatives, are supporting families. The government has been putting in place measures to ensure that students are secured and schools resume hitch-free. Meantime, the population of Mayo Muskota are calling on the government to help reinforce security.
Now to a major lead story. The National Communication Council refuses to provide answers to the worries of Equinoxe Media House over what is considered as an attack on press freedom in Cameroon. In a meeting between the NCC president and his collaborators and Equinoxe officials and employees today, it ended abruptly. Babla Jonathan reports.
Media practitioners of the Equinoxe media conglomerate expressed disappointment and grief over what is considered as an attack on Equinoxe and press freedom in Cameroon. The president of the National Communication Council of Cameroon, veteran journalist Joe Chebonken Kalabupse, is welcomed at the headquarters of the media house in Douala in a gloomy atmosphere. Speaking on behalf of the Chief Executive Officer of Equinoxe, Editor-in-Chief Sejalo Otto breaks the silence, explaining the reason for the black attire put on by all employees of Equinoxe and La Nouvelle Expression.
Nous sommes des Africains, nous sommes en noir.
A message of mourning over an attempt to kill the media house.
Parce que des pères ont voulu, bien veulent tuer Equinoxe. Le Conseil de la communication nous a condamnés.
Highlighting the unjust summoning and suspension of journalists like former editor-in-chief Cedric Nofeli, Duval Fangwa, and some flagship prime-time programs like Droit de réponse and 237 le débat.
Pour la petite histoire, que je vous dise tous maintenant la réalité.
In a brief response, the National Communication Council NCC president condemns what he calls unwelcoming, unrespectful, and unprofessional attitude of the media professionals.
Et puis vous me laissez dans la voiture pendant plus de 40 minutes parce que vous êtes en deuil.
He also raised concerns about the fact that he had to wait in front of the Equinoxe headquarters for over an hour, though he and his delegation arrived close to 1 hour before the time communicated to Equinoxe officials by the council.
Quand même, quel deuil, quel deuil.
The meeting ends abruptly with the unceremonious departure of the NCC president and his collaborators.
And now we talk something else. Police officers attempt to disrupt a press conference granted by Barrister Michelle Ndoki in Douala. They arrived at her private residence shortly after the press conference that was meant for the announcement of a new civil society organization working to bring about change in Cameroon. Once more, Babla Jonathan reports.
Police officers in civilian attire invade the private residence of Barrister Michelle Ndoki in the Douala 5 subdivision a few minutes after a press conference. In an exchange with the lawyer, they claimed to have come to protect her after learning that something was happening there. She invited journalists to reveal her plan of action to ignite change in the governance and poor socio-economic situation of the country through a civil society organization, Nation Builders.
Our mission is to become for Cameroon what those organizations are for their country. Make sure that the will of our people is known and taken into account, that we together, collectively drive change, concrete change that directly impacts the population.
She calls on Cameroonians to unite in a bid to counter repression, threat, intimidation, arbitrary arrest and detention, torture, and what some civil society leaders qualify as state terrorism.
We need to be in our numbers. Let's gather around our commonalities. Our ambition for Cameroon, we need this to be a big nation. This is something that we share across the board. Let's unite behind that. And we think our first project, the Lookout, is one of a project that can gather Cameroonians, because everyone wants to know the truth about the next election.
To the initiators of the Builders Movement, 2025 should be the turning point in the history of Cameroon.
And now we talk sports. The national senior men's football team carried out their first training session in Yaoundé this Tuesday as they prepare for the upcoming AFCON qualifiers. The training session comes on the heels of the upheaval between Fecafoot and Minsep upon the arrival of the Indomitable Lions players on Monday night at the Hilton Hotel in Yaoundé. Smaji Kangable watched the training session and now reports.
Expected at Le Brasseries training ground in Dokoti for their first training session, players of the national football team were absent with the gates of the brewery company closed. Instead, the players who were already in Yaoundé showed up at the annex number 1 of the Ahmadou Ahidjo Stadium for their first training session. The die-hard supporters were also around to boost the morals of the players. Surprisingly, the head coach, who was usually the first to step out of the vehicle of the Indomitable Lions, Mark Breeze, wasn't the leader of the Indomitable Lions to the pitch. But his assistant, Joachim Munanga, François Mambiik, and fitness trainer Christophe Manouvrier, who were spotted with the team. Mark Breeze will later make his appearance later after the players were already on the pitch. Just like in their first outing, it was an interurban bus agency that the team hired, notwithstanding the ongoing tug-of-war between Fecafoot and the Ministry of Sports and Physical Education. Players who showed up at the training session weren't disturbed. It's the first training session on home soil for the Indomitable Lions since their arrival in Yaoundé as they prepare for the clash against the Brave Warriors of Namibia come September 7, 2024.
Sportsman Smart Jikangable ending this first part of the news. Coming up next is Talking Point. Tonight on Talking Point, we'll continue discussing on the Minsep Fecafoot saga, which is still ongoing. And my guest tonight is a sports editor. He's known as Philemon Bale. Good evening, Philemon. It's a pleasure to have you on Talking Point tonight.
Hello, Immaculate, and thanks for giving me this opportunity on Equinoxe television. It's always a pleasure, and I'm grateful. Good evening.
Lions had their first training session today at the Omispo Annex Stadium in Yaoundé. The St. Lions were expected to hold their first training session at the Brasserie du Cameroun training ground in Douala. It's very obvious that Fecafoot and Minsep are yet to come to an agreement. Until now, the venue of where the Cameroon-Namibia match will hold is still hanging in the air. What's your reading of the persisting conflict between Minsep and Fecafoot?
Well, to begin with, I would rather not want to term what is happening in a conflict between Fecafoot and Minsep. I think my reading of the situation is the state of Cameroon trying to, through its Ministry of Sports, trying to bring order where it deemed necessary. So to me, it's not a conflict. Fecafoot is just like any other association in the country And of course, we can't term it a conflict between her and her mother ministry, the Sports of Physical Education. The minister has over 50 federations he's managing, so I don't think if he has to put some order at the level of the Ministry of Feka Basket, that is going to tempt the conflict. No, there's no conflict. And secondly, to imagine that the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon have been programmed or were programmed to have a training session this morning at the École de Football de Brazzaville training facility without any publicity, I think we are hitting rock bottom. First of all, the facility is situated at Lokoti, and to believe that you bring in professionals from abroad, from their clubs, and take them to Lokoti at the facility. I mean, no disrespect to the facility, but again, I think first of all, it doesn't meet the standards to prepare for an international competition like the AFCON draw games Cameroon is preparing for. And then secondly, it's almost out of the box, almost out of context, I should put it that way. So to me, there's no conflict. The Lions are in Yaoundé. The game is going to be played at the Yaoundé Amadou Ahidjo Stadium. The players are in Yaoundé, the coach is in Yaoundé, and his technical staff. Preparation is being done at the level of the ministry, and of course, the supporters. Amadou Ahidjo is a historic ground, and of course, we intend to keep the history going. So, played at the Amadou Ahidjo Stadium in Yaoundé, if you ask me.
Philemon Bawe, I think I'll have to contradict you who just said there's no conflict, because it's very clear that the Lions are siding with MINSEP rather than the Football Federation. How could this conflict possibly affect the performance of the players?
Of course, in a football club or in a football team, first things first, the players will always align with their head coach. Take it or leave it. So it's no surprise, it's no news for me that the players picked Yaoundé Hilton over Fekafoot's La Falaise. And secondly, to think that this is going to affect their performance, I beg to differ. Now, let's roll the tape back in their first two qualifier matches played in Cameroon and Angola. You remember, the federation confiscated somehow the equipment, no balls, no cones, no training wears, and even the bus that usually transport the players while in camp was not made available to the team. Now the ministry and its accompanying ministries took upon themselves to provide buses, to provide training equipment, and of course that is how the players managed to galvanize themselves around the coach and picked up 4 out of possible 6 points. We won at home and of course played a draw game in Angola. So if back then this series of upheavals, in quotes, this series of disturbances, external influence, trying to destabilize the club, did not destabilize the club, I don't think right now with what is happening, it is going to affect the players' performance. Because first of all, there's team spirit, there's togetherness within the camp, and I think those are one of the positives of the head coach, Brehm. It is not going to affect the players, they are serene. Of course, we have images of them last night at the Hilton Hotel. We also have glimpses of the den today. So I think the players are serene, they know what is at stake, they know the challenges that they may face, they know of everything that is happening. But these are professionals, Immaculate. They know their job, and they know what is at stake. Cameroon wants to qualify for the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations, and they are in pole position. They just need to win the games and seal qualification. So this and more will not affect their performance. That I can assure you.
Philemon Bale, now that the players fail to show up when the federation is expecting them, but rather follows the directives of the Ministry of Sport and Physical Education, in case of any issue, who should shoulder the responsibility?
In case of any issue, now, there is no issue, there is not going to be any issue. First of all, Fekafoot in his rightful position sent out invitations to club for their players to come and play for the national team, which is normal. But imagine a professional player in Europe. He is on board a flight to Cameroon to answer present for national team duties and discovers that the hotel, the beds, the internal private space where he is going to be lodged has been filmed by the federation and put public out there in social media. To me, that is breach of confidentiality. That is breach of trust. That is breach of security, most importantly. So I can conveniently tell you that the players felt insecure going to La Falaise because their privacy, their private space and equipment were already out there in the public. So nothing is going to happen to the players. It is true Fecafoot invited them. But as a player, you have the right to decide not to go at a particular place which seems to be unsecure. Even your club would understand. And now we are hearing reports that Fecafoot will write to the clubs, to inform the clubs, to sanction the players because they did not respect the La Falaise man ground. No, sir, no. The players have their backing. They felt unsecure. They felt somehow betrayed by Fecafoot. How on earth? I mean, these are some of the managerial lapses we have been crying about. How do you post bed spaces and equipment of players of the national team on social media? And secondly, Fecafoot cannot provide logistics, security, and comfort more than what the state is already providing in Yaoundé. So nothing is going to happen, and if anything happens, the state is going to be responsible when the time comes.
And now, you earlier said it's but normal for the players to listen to their coach. Some people are of the opinion that the head coach, Mark Breeze, has been manipulated by the ministry and some hidden hands at the presidency. What do you think about this?
I really beg to differ from the opinion, I don't know if it's popular or not, that Mark Breeze, the head coach of the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon, is being manipulated or under any sort of influence. I must say that drawing from his policeman background, he definitely at 60 plus should be a man who is straightforward, a man who is rigid with his words, a man who is consistent with his actions. So he's under contract with the Ministry of Sports and Physical Education, and he has respected every bit of clause on that contract this far, given that, you know, it's been a rough terrain for him ever since he was appointed head coach, with all the ups and downs, with all the drags, with Fecafoot in the past, with all the media challenge that he's been having. I think he has proved to many Cameroonians that he's the man for the job. He's not a Beni-wee-wee coach, you know. He's not someone who looks like could easily be influenced by an external power. I think, on the contrary, Mr. Breeze has shown that he's a man for the job. He has been able to ignite the lost but found team spirit at the level of the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon, a similar team spirit which his compatriot Hugo Bros took the team alongside during the 2017 African Cup of Nations, and of course won the trophy. So I think that Mr. Breeze is just doing his job to pick up 4 out of available 6 points in 2 qualifying games under such very difficult working conditions.
Take this last question. The said conflict between Fecafoot and Mensep has lasted for over 4 months, but the head of state is silent. Don't you think this situation could lead to an explosion in this country?
Immaculate, the head of state, as things stand, has a lot on his plate, and that we all know. We don't expect the head of state to merge himself in something which I think he gets daily reports about. Remember, in one of his public outings, he made in very strong but clear terms that he's going to do everything possible to make sure that there's serenity, there's calm at the level of football in Cameroon. And of course, he has competent ministers to whom he delegated this assignment. It's a group of ministries, as you can realize: the Ministry of Sports and Physical Education, the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Public Health, and of course the Ministry of Finance, among others. So you don't expect the head of state to come out and say something about the Fecafoot stroke Mensep saga or conflict in quotes. No, he has assigned the project in competent hands, and of course he gets day-to-day updates from these authorities. And like I said, the man has a lot on his plate. Remember, 2025 presidential elections upcoming, and of course the state of the nation, security. He has so much on his plate, and of course you and I at this point in time, we don't expect the head of state to come and say something concerning this issue. It's been handled. It's going to take some time, but again, if you look at it critically, there's some sort of serenity, there's some sort of liberty within the ranks of the indomitable lions of Cameroon. The players play freely, they come wholeheartedly, and of course they're giving their best as much as possible. So to me, Mr. Biya has a lot, and I mean, we don't expect him to come here and make a statement.
Thank you, Philemon Bale, for accepting my invitation. And that's it for this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your keen attention. Stay in the company of more interesting programs. Coming up next is Equinoxe Swap, presented by Serge Alain Otou. And exactly 8 p.m., you have the news in the French language with Gillian Betbisai. Bye-bye for now.